I'm so honored today to have Bryan Celli with us. He's with the Crestron Design Center in New York, and it is absolutely no question that you are not a stranger to all kinds of questions and concerns that people might have when they come in to experience either Crestron or smart home technology for the first time. So before we get totally started here with some questions that I have for you, I just want to thank you for taking the time today because I know you're extremely busy and I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So our motto here at QAV is experience the difference. And for people out there that are either new to Crestron and the brand and so on, can you just kind of shed light in some of the differences that people experience when they come to Crestron as a brand and to the design center showroom in New York?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is if anyone has had experience and it's been from years ago, the biggest thing is seeing what 2021 Crestron means as opposed to, pre-iPad, 11 years ago. And so when you're a company that's been around for 50 years, coming up next year is our 50-year anniversary, there's so much that has evolved. Forget 50 years, just in 15 years. And so oftentimes it's eye-opening. I had a gentleman in here yesterday from Florida that shared that with me. He hadn't seen a Crestron system in 18 years. And he said he was blown away and had no idea what Crestron does today. So having lighting control and motorized shades bundled under what our reputation was, which was just the AV part, now it gave him the ability to see and understand what scalability truly means and the single platform to be able to communicate with devices two-way instead of send a command. I hope it happened. So those types of things that visiting the design showroom has helped us communicate and then demonstrate.
I think that's great. And it brings up a really good point, right? Because everything that we experience, especially in technology and in life in general, is a snapshot in time. And so some people are locked into a snapshot in time in terms of perspective of what's available or what kind of technology exists or Crestron as the brand, right? So that's why we also like having our showroom here as well, because it's like, oh, okay, there's a few things here I didn't even know were possible. Right. And we love that. And that's why we have these facilities. And that's why you guys have that one in New York, right? It's all about driving that customer experience and showing them what's possible.
This October, we turned 10. We've had over 22,000 people through here in the 10 years. So just to put perspective you knock out a year for COVID, but that just shows, the import of someone going and touching something. And the point you made about snapshot in time, there was a car company recently, I think it was Buick, that their commercial was, hey, where are you? And it's, oh, I'm in the Buick right in front of you. And they're like, where are you? I don't see you. And then finally the person's like, I'm right here. They go, that's a Buick? Because the perception, they had to start to work on changing people's mindset of that brand. And so having a space where you could do that or being given the opportunity to take somebody from that snapshot in time from Crestron in the past to today, and experience is the best way. Yeah. We do really, really well. Most of us do really well in our industry at saying what we do, right? We try to give our elevator pitch, but it is amazing how we'll give a sentence and then in our head, we think of another sentence to try to explain it deeper. And then another sentence to try to explain it deeper. Because we look at the person and they're going, oh, and we're like, all right, they didn't get it from that, or they got it a little bit. Let me go another layer. So we can passionately and in an excitable way share what we do. But the aha moment, the light bulb, the moment their eyes go, oh, I see it now, or now I understand, it needs the experience to connect to those words that they were kind of defining in their brain. But now that they're seeing it, they go, oh, this is what I thought. This is what I see. Now I understand. And that's totally where I feel the value is with spaces like ours.
Absolutely. So speaking of this experiences that we're referring to and all the smart home features that are available today, what are like the top 3 that you see people getting the most excited about?
Well, it depends on their aptitude of technology. For ones that have never had anything, the concept of hitting one button as they leave and everything turning off, just the moment of impressiveness that holds in their reaction when you talk through their process right now. And then you connect that to, okay, this is all you need to do. And it's, whoa, wait a minute. It's not just my lights turned off. Your shades are closing and the TV's turned off and the music coming out of the speakers stopped. Like, it's all of those things. So simple features that take away their processes and their steps and make it convenient and it's easy to use. Things like that still rank in the top 3. I think people are more inquisitive about voice, but there's a hesitance. I find that there are 2 categories. There are people that are anti it. As soon as voice gets mentioned, it's nope, I don't want to even think about doing it because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And then there are others that have said, I already own this device. Microphones are in it. I'm hitting I agree. They're probably listening to me anyway, so I don't care.
Right.
So those individuals that are willing to just accept voice for what it is, they are really liking the fact that they can just say a command. And I've got josh.ai in the showroom along with the Amazon solution. And when people start to see, okay, I have an Amazon Alexa and I see what you could do with that. And then it's, whoa, how much more you do with Josh? That's pretty cool to see. I never experienced it at all. Then you gave me a taste. And now you're giving me what the meal is, right? When you have the ability to do more natural speak and multiple commands in one sentence. So I think voice is impressive. And then the always elusive but mandatory remote accessibility. People love the fact when they hear, wait, I can connect to my house remotely and I can pull up a camera or I can unlock a door. I can do these basic things, but I'm not there. And that peace of mind of having the device that's with them all the time, being their portal back to their home, wherever that is, are top requested.
Yeah, for sure. And the voice piece that you mentioned is quite interesting because we obviously have the exact same reactions to it. Mm-hmm. And so what we've adopted now is strictly Josh as the platform.
Yeah.
And we don't actually talk about it. We just start to show it.
Yep.
And then we're starting now to implement in other rooms that reference it really nicely, like the room over my shoulder here, which we call hidden technology.
Yeah.
Because it's almost theatrical in terms of what happens. I mean, the lights change and things are revealed that are hidden, and he's responding with this cool custom response. And so it's kind of fun to introduce the technology without really talking about it too much, just because of how we're showing it.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is because, we struggled with offering voice to our customers for so long because it was almost like like scripted, right? Like, here's the script of how to say it. And if you don't, then it might not happen exactly as it should.
That's right.
Whereas with our friend Josh, it's a lot more natural and it's a lot more technically accurate. It just kind of flows a lot easier. So it's super easy for people to use. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that we've worked on enhancing the experience with here.
And I use Crestron Home here. And actually yesterday I just deployed their AV control with voice. And so I just shot some personal videos with, dim the lights, lower the shades, and play season 1, episode 1 of Stranger Things. And
that's right.
Bloop, 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 did all 3. I think the big thing with voice is that I don't lead with voice ever.
Yep.
I actually introduce it as, oh, my screen's right over there. I can go over there and touch it, but I'm just going to say a command. I can do the button press that would trigger the exact same thing, but I'm just going to say it with a voice. And then that's how I introduce it softly. And they're like, wait a minute. You just said what? And that's how it gets introduced. Instead of it feeling like I'm pushing this gadgety thing on you, it's, I've got the regular way to do it. I can do it from the phone. I can do it from a touchscreen or a keypad. But right now we're over here and I'm just going to, we were just talking and that made me think of something. Let me show you it. I'm going to use the voice command. And
that's great.
I stress that it's not a requirement for the system to work. It's an add-on and an enhancement to the system, but it's not the requirement. There's always a button you can walk to. That's my strongest recommendation when it comes to voice.
Yeah.
I usually actually have integrators. I recommend integrators. If someone's kind of on the fence or it's an introduction to it, give them 5 that are correlated to a button press And this way, if it fails, or in their mind it fails, they forget the right verbiage to say or the correct format to say it, and it doesn't work for them. They had 5 of it included, and they still have their buttons, and they can use to dismiss it. But if those 5 work, then you're going to get requests to add 5 or 10 more.
That's right.
So keep it simple. I always say either multi-room or whole house type commands. You know, and if there are things that they do regularly. Like I love the good night one and the good morning one for a bedroom. Entertain or it's party time is what I say for mine. And it says shake your groove thing or party like it's 1999 is my responses that it gives me that I plugged in there. So, you know, multi-room stuff, obviously the welcome or the I'm home or I'm leaving, you know, for welcome and goodbye. And you give them some of those, and watch movie is the other one. So I have those 4 or 5 that I use as standards, and you give them those. If they're not going to use those, likelihood is that they're not going to really use it ever. But I
kind of feel like this almost can segue to like another conversation for us to have about kind of sharing like what's working and how you're going about showing different types of features of the systems. Because just hearing like a few things there, it's like, you know, it's giving us some ideas here. So
perfect. Awesome.
We'll have to share some stories.
Yeah,
so,
I love stories.
Coming off of those, you know, top 3 features that people get most excited about, and being that you guys have been in this facility that you're in for 10 years, what are some like a story that resonates with people the most when they come through in terms of experiences?
So I'm saying this to you because I know you believe in this. Unfortunately, in our industry, I should say fortunately, it's starting to become more of the norm than it had been for years or what we were known for throughout the years, but it unfortunately still exists with some. The discovery process that needs to happen when they're in the showroom. I don't view showrooms as tours, even though they get defined as such often. Oh, we're going to go take a tour of the showroom. But if you don't have a good 10, 15 minute conversation just informally with the person in the space, but just talking to them first, it doesn't matter what you think are cool features and cool things that everyone would love. There's always going to be a person that isn't going to connect to it or see the value. And so you get egg on your face when you try to push something passionately, and then it ends up being, not interested. And now you don't know how to recover. So there's a story that many might have heard within the dealer network, because I've shared it on our webinars in the past, but we had a dealer contact me who said, Bryan, I need your help. I'm flying up. There's a homeowner building a 30,000 square foot home in Texas. And she said, we don't need any automation. And I was like, well, okay. Well, when you say she responded, what did you talk to her about? He said, well, I showed her the thing that obviously she needs. She needs the ability to hit goodbye and turn off all her lights, 30,000 square feet. There's no way she's going to want to go room by room. And so he's like, and she immediately kiboshed it. It was like I insulted her. I don't know what to do. So I said, well, tell me when let's get you guys up here and we'll go through it. So they come up for a visit. They fly up from Texas. She walks into my showroom, 7 steps, just 7 steps worth of walking, and sits on the back edge of the corner of the sofa, not on the cushiony part, on the back part that's closest to the door. So I asked her what she's looking forward to in her home, and she said, not this. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not talking about this. I want to know about your home. And so she started talking about where it was located and the views that it has. And then she talked about her horses. Now, I'm a city guy, so I was sincerely interested in understanding the horses part. That could have been the only thing we talked about the rest of the time. And I was completely fine with that. So she said, I asked her about her horses. I said, what do you mean? You have horses? She says, I have 8 horses. And I said, that's great. That's so awesome. Do they like roam on a ranch? Do you ride them? She says, I ride a horse every day I'm home. And I said, well, do you have like a schedule? Like Mondays is one horse, Tuesdays are another horse. And she said, well, it depends on the weather. Some horses are better when it's rainy. Some are better when it's hot. And she said the key word that I think integrators need to be more cognizant of with homeowners. She said, but it's frustrating sometimes. So we sell solutions, right? We brag about lighting, shading solutions, AV solutions. Well, if we think back to grammar school, when we use the word solution in math, It was the solution to a math problem, right? So we really need to hone in on and focus in on what their problem is. But the problem with that problem is usually they're not calling it a problem because they don't know any better. It's just an inconvenience or a frustration. And so we have to listen to those key words. And so she said a frustrating thing was that the cell service is bad and that the staff, when she calls them to get snowflake ready, that they don't get the message. And then she shows up and the horse isn't ready and she's got to wait for them to prep the horse. And so there was the green light window to introduce the concept of how technology can help fix that frustration. So we showed and discussed the ability for her to have a list of all her horses. And then she selects it and sends it to the staff quarters. And the lights could flash, the screen can flash with a message saying snowflake. And then they hit confirm and she gets acknowledgement on her side. Shut up, you can do that? Well, here's another issue I have. So now the arms went from this to this. And then I got a touch later, like on the arm, like, no way, get out of there. You cannot do that. So the second issue was that the horses, the staff needs to let the horses out at a certain time. And it's really hot in Texas. And so we told them we can sync it up with Astronomical clock and have the stable doors open for them. If we can motorize those, we can send a trigger to open them. And then she said her other issue was one horse or two horses come back, and because it's really hot in Texas, all of a sudden it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon and the staff realizes midnight and Thunderbolt haven't come back yet. And so we recommended occupancy sensors in each stall. And then the moment one horse returned, that triggered an internal timer of 30 minutes as a hypothetical. It could be 5 minutes. We let her know it could be whatever. And then any of the stalls that were still unoccupied, that same screen flashes to the staff quarters and lights flash and they see, oh, Thunderbolt and Midnight haven't come back. And now it's 10 a.m. instead of 3 p.m. So her initial budget for the main living room was $850,000 for rug, lighting fixtures, wall coverings, and tables and all of the finishes. So for all the furniture, $850,000 for one room. The budget for the entire house to have automation was $250,000. So it didn't connect there. So by the end, they spent, and this isn't a Crestron thing, this was those gates for the stables and tying in all that. They did audio distribution in each horse's stall, so they each had different music.
Oh, that's so cool.
They spent $1.4 million on automating everything. But here's the part, I'm sorry, that was a little bit of a story, but remember what I told you the negative was, right? The dealer showed them a goodbye button. She has 20 staff that live on property. Guess what button she's never going to have to press? A goodbye button. So once we learned about the 20 staff, now we could focus on things that would help make them more efficient.
That's right.
Drawing every single shade when she's going to have a party and changing the light levels for when she has a party. Now, instead of the staff worrying about that, they're going to be able to take care of any guests, and one staff member just needs to go hit the button that says entertain, and then everything can get there. That was of interest to her, but it took lowering the guard and introducing a thing that fixes a problem that she didn't even know she had first. Then you can introduce the other concepts. So to me, that's a story that stands out from our perspective and from a homeowner's perspective. Things that we don't always hear about. Horse automation system instead of home automation, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the coolest version of a valet I've ever heard, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a valet for the horse stable.
Right.
And what's even cooler about that story is thinking of the use of, in essence, of really the most basic Crestron products that went into doing that. Touch panels, occupancy sensors, maybe some triggers or relays, I'm guessing, but really basic things that made this amazing experience.
Right.
Super cool experience. And people could do it if they had a whole collection of cars and someone that managed their cars or whatever. But, we use those products differently throughout almost every project. And here you have such a cool example that resonated with a homeowner in a very unique way that I think would be great to just have more people be aware of. And that's why we do stuff like this. That's why we have these conversations, because it's like, yes, it's important to talk about certain brands at certain times, but we are so focused on the relationship that we have with people that we're working with and the experiences that come together as a result of those relationships and the projects that we're involved in. And that's such an amazing example. And I love that you shared that. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. You're welcome.
Absolutely. So one thing that people never ask for when they come into our showroom is for things to be complicated. Nobody ever says, I want it to be complex. And that is a conversation that happens quite often, because someone might be in a conversation with us and say, but I don't want it to be complex. And regardless of what the budget is, small, medium, or really large, nobody's ever asked for that. And so one of the things I'd like to ask you is if you can kind of expand on that in terms of how the Crestron brand and ecosystem of all the amazing technology that you guys develop helps drive simplicity in the user experience and makes it easy for everybody.
Well, because we've been around for a long time, we have stories that aren't so positive, and one of my favorite conversations to have, I love using timelines to help people gauge the evolution of technology. Yeah. And so if I have an individual that comes in here and says, I have a Crestron system, or I had a Crestron system, and they share feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, one of the first things I ask is, what's the approximate age of when that system occurred? If it's older than 7 to 8 years old, it wasn't a full Crestron system. It was a blended system. And so right out of the gate, I know a way to introduce what we're doing today to help make that a simpler experience.
And for people that are just kind of maybe new to the brand, can you kind of just allude to what you mean by that?
That's right. Exactly. So for years, I mentioned a little bit earlier, AV was kind of the thing we were known as. And then there were other brands, a brand that did shades, and a different brand that did lighting control, another brand that did the HVAC. And so Crestron was the heart of the system from a control perspective. And then we would trigger to communicate to these other processors from these other brands to go and execute X command or Y command. That processor would receive the trigger from us and then in their own language, translate it, and then communicate to their device to make it happen. But you have a lot of tiers, like I just was mentioning, and then that's per brand and per device. And so you're using a Crestron device as the interface saying, do this, lights on or shades open. And then when that doesn't happen, you're saying Crestron's not working. So what we've done to make it simpler is, instead of having a processor that's necessary for all these separate siloed solutions, a Crestron processor, when it's talking to a Crestron shade motor or a Crestron keypad or dimmer or switch or a Crestron thermostat, it's the same processor. And not only has it removed the number of processors, but it also speaks the same language, to where I'm not just sending a trigger and then crossing my fingers, hoping that all the translation part happens and then the execution occurs. I'm sending the command and then it's giving me feedback. It's saying, I'm now at 50%, I'm now at 60%, I'm now at 70% real time, or adjusting a temperature to the HVAC system. It's sending that command to the HVAC system to then execute it. So we've cleared up and simplified the intermediary pieces to now have more of a direct communication. But my favorite thing that does, other than keep it streamlined and simple on one platform, is now it's a scalable solution. The folks that have never had anything before, when you start to show them everything, that's a huge leap. But to show them and start categorizing, I say there's 2 categories at the beginning, and then there's a third category that evolves during the discovery. There's the things they know they'd like. There's the things that they really don't think they would ever use. And then there's the, I didn't know that category that gets created during the discovery. And it's, oh, I didn't know that existed, or, oh, I didn't think of that for my home. That actually sounds interesting. And now your answer to any of those can be, we're going to plan for these things. We're going to give you the things you know you want now. You prove that you're their advocate and you're looking out for them instead of just trying to sell them a whole bunch of stuff. And because Crestron offers that single platform, that scalability is something that you can offer confidently.
Yeah. And, it is really important. It's hard for someone on the outside, I think, to really digest what you just said, like the vast importance that it holds, the weight that it holds, right? Because we're responsible for making sure these things work and flow and just operate nicely. But if we're at the mercy of another ecosystem that we don't have complete control with, or that hasn't been totally engineered in the same environment and tested thoroughly to work together, it's just more difficult. We're setting ourselves up for a greater challenge, kind of unnecessarily, right? So on that note, I almost want to kind of add a part two to that. So,
Sure.
You've got 8+ years or however long it's been that, Crestron has been focusing on that development, that R&D and that, manufacturing.
Mhm.
And one thing that I think that is so missed from the customer journey and research process as a consumer, if you're looking at Crestron and other brands that do similar things that Crestron does, is it's really hard to really find out about the company. Meaning, is it like a small R&D lab in North Carolina, or is it, a larger facility in Texas? Or in your case, can you kind of allude to what Crestron is doing to create all this amazing product and test it?
So that's fresh, and you asked this question without me knowing. And
Yes.
a week and a half ago now, I was at our headquarters, and I haven't been there for a while. It's in New Jersey, but I haven't been there in a while because I've been based here in the showroom in Manhattan, and I haven't gone through our R&D building and our production facility where we're building chips that go into and boards that go into our product. So it might not connect with people as to exactly what I'm saying here, but just to kind of put in the mind what we're doing in New Jersey. This isn't being done overseas. This is being done in Bergen County, New Jersey, 25 miles from Manhattan. We have a chamber that we put our products in, and we heat it to hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit and then drop it below degrees of Fahrenheit just to see where things start to fail. We're trying to accelerate and see what is this going to, how long is this going to last? Is this product going to last 2 years, or is it going to last 20 years? We have our shade motors, which have a lifetime warranty on them for residential projects. There are every X amount of production of motors, they reset a chamber that's weighted, and it accelerates the wear and tear of the motor. So one of the motors that we had there was the equivalent of almost 800 years worth of usage, and it was still working. The camera that was streaming it burnt out because it was zooming in and zooming out at the counter. So the camera didn't last, but the motor was almost 800 years. But who needs a motor to last 800 years? Most people would say, if you told me that lasted 25 years, that would be impressive for a motor. And so here it is, lasting almost 800. So, and then one of my other favorite devices is remote controls. So when you were saying it's hard for people to connect to some of what I was saying, look at the coffee table in your home right now. More than likely, you have at least a TV remote, a cable box remote, your surround sound receiver remote, an Apple TV and or a Roku remote. So 3 to 5 remote controls on your table that if you don't put them on in the same order, something's out of sync, right? Just imagine that being the devices that we're talking about when it comes to shades. All of these different guys that do their own thing, but they end up producing one end result, you to watch television. Imagine that's what we've simplified, is instead of having these different contraptions and then in the end result, it's one button from a device, we're unifying them and bringing them all together into one system. So we actually have a machine where, again, every X amount of production of our remote controls, a new remote gets put there, and the robot pushes every single button on that remote control over and over. It's measuring resistance, it's measuring responsiveness, all within every single touch. And this is most manufacturers. Once you get your approved version, you're not testing it anymore. You've gotten the good version. You're set. It's shipping now. You're on to another thing. And we're still doing that. One engineer out of our industry went to the factory and came to the showroom after. And he said, and I quoted him, he said, Bryan, before I went to your factory, I thought Crestron was overpriced. I didn't understand why it was priced the way it was. Now that I've seen what you do, when it comes to testing and engineering your products, you guys don't charge enough.
Yeah.
And it's a good.
And this is what I wanted you to allude to, right? If I were a consumer and I did not have the knowledge that I have now after being in this industry for so many years,
right?
At some point, it would be nice just to have a little bit of an idea of this. And I've had the pleasure of going to the factory.
Right.
So I know,
but
there are some design build partners, some clients that we are actually looking to take to the factory once things are fully open and ready for that again, just because that experience is so powerful. It is so cool to see that it's not just some black box that gets slapped together and it goes off into a home. It is so much research and development and testing after it ships, and further knowledge that gives you guys even, better information for the next product and so on and so forth. And so I just think it's kind of cool for people to have a little bit of an idea of that. And so that's why I kind of threw that in there after talking about the user experience and the shades. And I just started thinking, I was like, gosh, this is like kind of missing from the customer research journey. I think, when people are trying to figure out, what are they going to do? What are they going to invest in? Who are they going to use?
Well, you bring up a good point though, because for the most part, I don't know of many other manufacturers of electronics that have a way for you to even look into behind the curtain and see what's happening. Right. Most manufacturers, it's being bulk produced overseas. And so it's not even their facility. They're one of many or multiple. Yeah. And so even the prototype machine, remote controls, for example, for that to go through a prototype machine, and we were testing the way the angles and the curves were, that's in-house. It's not prototyping overseas, wait for the prototype, realize that we need 3 more degrees of an angle. Can you guys produce the next one? Wait 4 weeks, get that next prototype, and now the curvature is off. We're able to do these real time and make these adjustments. And that's an experience that's hard to communicate. But I do have some good news for you. You can start looking at some dates to book it, because we're going to allow for factory tours. So
awesome! No, that's great.
Looking at some schedules now and get your folks over here to visit.
That's fantastic. We're going to do it. Absolutely.
Perfect.
And we just started to touch on it very briefly, but maybe you can expand on this, which is how long Crestron's been around, the longevity, the brand, the trust in the product, and the immense research and development that goes into everything that you guys are building. And just talk about that piece a little bit in terms of the company history and where you guys have started and where you are today.
Well, family-owned company, started in a personal home, an engineer that loved to tinker. And from there, he loved to figure stuff out and see how it works. And then from there, it grew to this company today that is still family owned. It's on every continent. It's in over 90 cities throughout the world, but still privately owned by family members, and still running the company, still involved in every day-to-day business and decision making with our company. A quick story of what happened last Thursday. Homeowner heard about Crestron versus other brands, called up. I did a 30-minute kind of virtual tour. And then near the end, she said, well, this was really interesting. My husband's really the tech person. He's involved with Microsoft. And so I really want him to get on the call. So I said, well, if you want to do a little due diligence, you can research our relationship with Microsoft. So that was about 4 p.m. Eastern. 7:30 p.m. I get an email saying, I told my husband, he did the research. When can we start scheduling when we can come in there? Now he understands your product and why we would want to do Crestron. So just the partnerships that we have with global renowned companies, that whether they're Fortune 500 companies, whether they're government companies, where privacy and security of the utmost importance, for our product to not only be chosen and selected to be put in these locations, but also to receive certifications where it's the brand that has achieved whatever the parameters are. That same quality of product, we don't have a version that we decrease our security or our quality of work for residential products. The same processor that can go into a government building is going into someone's 2,500 square foot home or 10,000 square foot home. And meanwhile, it's operating the Pentagon. So there's not a sacrifice in quality and security because it's a smaller application. You're still getting that level of engineering and workmanship from the product when you're putting that in your home. So the peace of mind of the quality of the goods and their longevity. I have customers that have come in here that have 20-year-old Crestron systems. To put that in perspective for anybody watching that's out of the technology industry, 2004, 2005 is when luxury brands like the BMWs and the Mercedes of the world started to include a harness, a wiring harness in the car to allow for your phone to connect through Bluetooth. So that was 2004, 2005 was the time frame for that. Bluetooth in the car for it to just be something you can connect to. 11 years ago was the iPad, right? So most of us have some sort of tablet or Apple device or touchscreen device. But 11 years is, in the first 7 years, they had 12 different versions of the iPad. The first 7 years. So just evolution of technology and how fast things change. But that 20-year-old system that customer comes in with, he's not coming in here saying my stuff doesn't work for 20 years. He's coming in here and says everything still works, but the iPad didn't exist then. And so it's a little clunkier. It's 20-year-old technology. And so I need to upgrade and update it. It's the form versus the function that's winning in that moment.
That's right.
And so to have these systems, but that 20-year-old customer, the Samsung Curve TV that came out a couple of years ago, that 20-year-old system was able to have that Curve TV added to it just by having some firmware updated. He didn't have to change his processor. He didn't have to change his remote. It was just updating the processor with firmware and putting in the new code that sends the commands properly to that TV for a 20-year-old system.
Yes.
So these are the types of stories where the investment gets put in and then the workmanship and it working lasts. Sure, new things come out. If that's your priority, some things might need to get updated, but my lights are going on and my lights are going off. My shades are opening, my shades are closing. My stuff is functioning as it was years back.
Yes. And I think I might add to that and almost translate some of what you just shared into what that means to a customer, because as great as all those things are, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways that I hear from that is privately held, global presence, commercial and residential heritage. Because if and when something might happen or not go great, or maybe, and I'll use a specific example where a Crestron product may be failing on a project, but engineers from Crestron fly out, they check out what was going on. And in this specific example, it was another brand's product that was backfeeding into the Crestron product, causing it to fail. The Crestron product, I think, was like $50,000 or $100,000 or something. It was just it was running the whole house. And they found that the competing brand's product was backfeeding, causing the issue, and Crestron replaced the Crestron product. And I think when you hear that, what I hear is the fact that it's privately held allowed Crestron to make that decision and do what was right for the homeowner. Because if you are publicly traded and not privately held or heavily in debt, you have shareholders to answer to, and you have a lot of other variables that are going to be really difficult to make that call. So I think that's really great that you shared that, and I really appreciate it. There's all kinds of stories that obviously exist out there, and we're sharing some today. Yeah. And I think it's it's nice to be able to talk about them together, and I think it's even better for people to be able to chime in and listen to some of them. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And on that note, Bryan, those were the questions that I had for you today. And I just want to thank you so much. I am sincerely so appreciative of you taking the time to do this. It was a really fun format for me to chime in and catch up with you in. Definitely. And I'll just leave that with one fun question that we like to ask at the end of these videos, which is something along the lines: if we were all quarantined back in our homes again, and there was a blimp that would pass over the city and try to give people one message, what kind of message might you write on the blimp to share with everybody that was looking up at it?
Give love first. Give love first.
I like that.
If you
That's
give
awesome.
love first, even if you don't get it back, you still feel great because you gave. So
that's awesome.
So give love first.
I love that
message.
Awesome, Bryan. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again, and just have a great time, man. We'll talk to you soon.
You too, brother. Take care, man.
All right. Bye.